Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, taking a look at race number 10 at Churchill Downs on Saturday. It's the Grade 2 Lukas Classic. $500,000 is the purse. Some nice older horses going a mile and an eighth. Let's take a look at this field. We've got 8 in here. Hit Show, the number 6, is the 2-1 morning line favorite for Brad Cox, coming off a win in the West Virginia Governor's Stakes, a race where he got a perfect trip.
He sure did. We'll take a look at the replay of that in a little bit, Dan. But he did, run pretty well in there. Took a nice little step forward for a horse who hasn't really gotten going as a 4-year-old yet. Only 3 starts. I'll be honest. I'd be kind of surprised if he was the favorite at post time in here, but I'm a fan of this horse.
I wouldn't be surprised if Disarm, the 5, goes off favorite after a third-place effort in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Rattle and Roll, who's 5-2 on the morning line. He's a millionaire, returning off just about a year layoff. We'll throw up our time form U.S. pace projector. Cook Creek has been in very good form recently. He's stepping up in class with the speed perhaps to make the lead. The 8 Warrior Johnny hasn't been able to get close to the front in his last 2 races, but against this company, I think they have to be aggressive with him.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't feel like this pace had to be that fast, and I didn't see a ton of pace in this race. Maybe Cook Creek just goes. That certainly worked for them on a wet track at Saratoga in his most recent start. But you're right, Warrior Johnny from the outside, he's got enough speed to be forward in here.
Stto Boy, when he's on his best game, might show a little bit of speed, especially stretching out from the rail in his second off a long layoff. And although we do have Disarm at the back of the pack with the fastest time form U.S. late pace rating, I think he's somewhat adaptable if the pace is slow. Let's start things off with Stto Boy, who won the big cap at Santa Anita in 2023, but his form has just substantially gone downhill towards this fall and summer, the summer and fall of 2023 into this year. They prepped him last time out off the layoff, sprinting on turf at Kentucky Downs. He likely gained fitness out of that race. If he runs one of his best races from 2022, 2023, he's in the mix. He'll be a price. He has some speed. You still got a lot of questions to answer.
Exactly. All those things are true. And that's why you just got to sort of wait and see what kind of price he is. The 20-1 on the morning line, I mean, that has to at least make you take a second look at this horse, Dan, because you know that if he can still run, and that's a big question, whether or not he can still run, but if he can easily beat this field. And you're right, he has speed from the rail here. So don't be surprised if they get aggressive with this horse, second off the layoff, switching from turf to dirt and stretching out. I mean, he's a contender with his good race if he can still run it.
Ken McPeak and Brian Hernandez have worked a lot of magic this year with the likes of Mystic Dan and Torpedo Anna, especially at Churchill Downs. They're going to wave their wand with the 2 Rattle and Roll because this will be his first start since last year's Lukas Classic, a race where he finished a good 4th. This guy's got a lot of back class. He won the Stephen Foster 3 starts back when it was run at Ellis Park. He won the Pimlico Special. He was very good towards the spring and summer of 2023. Now he's got to deal with a layoff.
Yeah, that's obviously the main question here. We haven't seen this horse in a year, and that it's not easy to take horses off of layoffs like that, especially when they come back in a whatever it is, $500,000 Grade 2 race, going 9 furlongs. That being said, I mean, this is not a bad spot for this horse if he is ready, because he's good, and I just really appreciate. He was a good 3-year-old, Dan. They really handled him really well, I thought, but he came back as a much improved horse as a 4-year-old last year.
Happy American, the number 3, is sort of a one-run closing type. He'll need a little bit of pace. He's very, very honest. I've always wondered if he was sort of a cut below these type of horses, nibbling graded stakes races in the past. His last race, he faced a promising runner in Saudi Crown going a mile at a distance that might have been a little bit sharp for him.
Yeah, he's a really nice horse, hard hitting, always shows up. He's got a terrible running style for this race, though, Dan. I mean, it doesn't feel like there's a ton of pace in here, and he just doesn't have any speed at all. So it just doesn't feel like this race is going to set up the right way, because I feel like you, maybe he's a cut below. He'll need some help if he's gonna beat a field like this, and he might not get that help.
The 4 Cook Creek was a good early 2-year-old and early 3-year-old for Jerry O'Dwyer before he lost his way. And Michael Maker, who just has the magic touch claiming horses, took this one for $40,000 3 starts back, and Cook Creek has been unstoppable ever since. He's won 2 more in a row, including this win at Saratoga over a very sloppy track and a very short field. He showed speed, he stayed off the rail, and he sprints home at odds on.
Yeah, I just ran another good race here. You're right. This was a really good claim for these connections, because this horse had potential, lost his way, but you knew that if they can get him back to his good races, he could be competitive in some nice spots, and that's been the case so far. I'm a little reluctant to take this horse in a race like this, Dan, if only because, man, those Flying P horses, they were just winning everything at Saratoga. I felt like no matter what they put on the track, those horses were ready to go, and they were all winning, and I just don't know if that's going to carry itself forward.
I think the number 5 Disarm in some ways is the horse to beat. He was 4th in the Kentucky Derby last year, 2nd in the Travers. I was a little disappointed that he got banged up after the Travers and had to miss so much time. And it just seems like nothing's gone right for him this year. He came back with bar shoes in his first 2 starts. The Whitney, he ran okay. The Jockey Club Gold Cup, he didn't break very well in that race, but it looked like he was outpaced on the turn, and then he re-rallied a little bit at the end. It seems like he's running in spots. The blinkers are off. The bar shoes have been off for the last 2 races. This is the kind of field Disarm can beat if you give him a trip.
Yeah, 100%. I don't have anything to add to that, really. To me, he's just been a disappointment so far as a 4-year-old. So we'll see if Asmussen can get him back on track. I think it's interesting that the blinkers are off here. Maybe it'll make a difference. I did not think he ran well in the Jockey Cup Gold Cup last time. I did not think he ran particularly well in the Whitney 2 starts back, and he was obviously terrible the last time he ran on this track in the Stephen Foster. Listen, I'm still trying to hold on being a fan of this horse, Dan, but it's getting hard.
Hit Show, the number 6, went through the Triple Crown grind last year, finishing directly behind Disarm in the Kentucky Derby, then in a dead heat and for 4th in the Belmont. And I like that Brad Cox gave him a break after a disappointing effort in the Oklahoma Derby. And he's come back okay as a 4-year-old. Here's the trip and race we talked about earlier on, the West Virginia Governor's Cup, where they stacked up 2, 3, 4 path on the turn, and they forgot about Flo, snuck up the rail on the 7-5 Hit Show.
And it does feel like the trip kind of made the difference here too, Dan. He didn't have to go around. 4 of them are going to line up and race for it through the stretch. And Hit Show's got a little bit more momentum down on the inside. He prevails. I wasn't particularly taken with that performance, but he just did what he had to do to win. I will say this though, I did like his race off the layoff at Churchill Downs over this track and distance. I thought he ran really well in that allowance race. And he's a horse, so I think he's a major player here, Dan. I just wouldn't take him if that morning line's right. I wouldn't take 2 to 1 on this horse.
Bolsey, the number 7's returning off of a February layoff, and that's a pretty substantial one, especially for a horse that might have some class concerns. They tried him in a stakes race in that most recent start, the Razorback, and while he did have an outside post and a wide trip, this field just seems tougher than that one. So he has to deal with the class and the layoff. I want to take a wait-and-see approach and maybe see this guy at Oaklawn next year.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. He has so much to prove here, Dan. And when you go back and watch that Razorback, the last time we saw him, and it was a while ago, I mean, to me, he just didn't run that well in that race. He's just going to have to find a way to run the race of his life to beat a field like this.
Warrior Johnny got a win 3 starts back at Saratoga, a track that he always seems to handle. And they ran him in the Whitney, and those horses were probably too good for him. And then they ran him in the Charlestown Classic. And I won't fault him for running poorly around 3 turns over that bull ring, especially when wired over by a horse that really likes it in Skippy Longstocking. He has more tactical speed than he's shown in his last 2 races. I think it's really incumbent for Jose Ortiz to get out of there, break well, sit off Cook Creek, and take your shot.
I agree with that. And we'll just see. I think more than anything else, Dan, he just has to prove that he's a stakes horse. I mean, so far, they've tried him several times in, grade 1, grade 2 races. And it hasn't really, not hasn't it worked out. He just hasn't really been competitive in those races. So he's got a lot to prove here. But if he gets the right trip in here, I won't be surprised if he's competitive, because there's nobody to really trust in this entire field.
Well, let's take a look at our top selections for the Lukas Classic. You're going with Rattle and Roll, who, when he is on his game, is very, very good. The layoff is obviously a concern, but as you said, this horse just might have found the right spot.
Yeah, I think he's coming back in a good spot here. I don't love taking him off a layoff like that, but if he's ready to go, this is a field that he can clearly beat. We'll see if he gets the right trip in this spot. And I couldn't really talk myself into anybody else. Certainly not the 2 other short prices in here. I don't really want them at short prices. And then Stto Boy was the other horse for me, Dan, but I couldn't really talk myself into him.
Yeah, I have question marks about the horses that are going to take money. Rattle and Roll, the layoff, Hit Show coming off of a good trip victory. Disarm hasn't had anything really gone right for him this year, although he is good on his best day. Yeah. I took a little bit of a shot with Warrior Johnny, hoping that he can get close to the pace. I think he's got to drift substantially off that 5-1 morning line, with others likely to take some money. 8-5-2-3 for me, 2-5-1-6 for Mike. It's the Lukas Classic, big Saturday at Churchill. Good luck.
Hey friends, you look like you're in need of a winner. If you enjoyed the great content right here, just click and subscribe right here and enjoy the great DRF.com Race of the Days, the phenomenal stakes previews, and so much more. Many of that content featuring me and my exceptional selections. Trust me, you won't regret it.